That should be it. Thank you very much. Do you know what is, I feel so wonderful this morning because now, eventually, I'm a movie star. Don't believe everything that you've seen. It's never true. It's always the public relations side. But thanks for the invitation, and it is great to be here, and it's so encouraging to see such a lot of people at the Teaching and Learning Conference. I think that is something that is incredible, to get all of you, 150 people together. That's amazing. Now, without wasting time, because I think lunch is waiting as well, I was asked to talk about the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and it's linking to your theme of the whole age of uncertainty in which we find ourselves. I cannot talk about everything. It's the Fourth Industrial Revolution is so encompassing. But I will touch on a few things. The problem already is that I have too many slides for a short time. But I will see how I can manage through it. But I would like to say a few things specifically with regard to teaching and learning, or let me rather say to the educational environment. So I think the first thing, for me it's difficult to stand in one place. The first thing about the Industrial Revolution is, of course, that some people say, what are all these names? And it's not a revolution, it's just another evolution or whatever. But there were quite a few things in the world that happened over the years. And the first thing you will know is the whole effect that steam had. And if you think about it, every time when there's a major revolution, the speed of life changes. First we were traveling by horse, walking, running, then by horse, and we built carts, and then came the steam train. Okay, today we are already traveling at over 300 kilometers an hour if you're in Europe, Japan, China. So the world changed, and it got faster. And then we discovered electricity. Oh my goodness, now you have to work at night as well, like lecturers, prepare for tomorrow. But it changed the world. It brought so many new things. Think about all the machines. And the machines originally worked with steam, and the boats were steam boats. And now it changed our whole life. It was a major revolution in our lives and in the world and in manufacturing. And then came the whole idea of automation, but not the automation that I will get to of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, because this was just a sort of a dumb automation. The robots that we know that you will find if you go to Nissan or Datsun, any of these factories is just not intelligent. That sort of a robotic machine can only do one thing. There's no general intelligence built into that machine. So, but it was still, with computerization and digitization, it was a major change in our lives. And electronics became part of almost everything that we do. And then is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And now suddenly, it's a number of technologies coming together, and I will touch on it further. And because of that, the cyber and the biological and the physical worlds are now all becoming integrated. It's a whole new way, and there are many technologies in this regard. And the major thing about this is that it became an incredibly intelligent world. And I will also touch on artificial intelligence. It's a different world. And you may not know it, but you have it everywhere. Sometimes it's so hidden that you don't know about it. But let me say a few things more about the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Why is this so important? Why do we have to talk about something like this that is very technology-driven at a teaching and learning conference? Do you know why? Because it is a race. A tremendous race in this world that is going on at the moment. And if you look at around you, you will see that countries are skilling up at a speed. United States, China. South Africa is still asleep. You will probably remember that only end of last year, the president, for the first time, appointed a panel. They haven't met yet. A panel to think about the future of the fourth industrial revolution in South Africa. And SADC took a decision, but nothing came. They never met. They also took a decision. So very little has been done. I don't think we are ready yet for the big changes. Other countries are ready. If you go to Rwanda, they are far ahead of us in this regard. Also in higher education. A small country with a painful history, but they made it. You will see what is going on is it's an economic race, it's an industrial race. It's about controlling the world to a large extent. It's about the same war that you see now between China and America. What has China got? On the one hand, it's a lot of cheap labor. America, like South Africa, with a very complex labor laws, and so labor has became so expensive. We cannot compete with China. So what's the only way to compete with China? Is to automate. To automate, to go for robots, to make things where I can do it at a cheaper price, at cost, lower cost. And that's why I say highly qualified, expensive labor cost countries must automate to compete. So it's about domination of the world. Don't be fooled. And what's the end of it all? It's that the workforce, and we all will have to change. It affects our lives. It creates what you've chosen as your theme, a complex, uncertain landscape. Quite often people ask me, what is the next big thing? In technology, that's a popular thing. What is the next thing that I must have that will make me rich or make me stand out or give me an NRF rating or whatever it is? But I say the next thing, big thing, is 1 trillion small things. A huge number of technologies. And it's the confluence or the convergence of all these technologies that is this fourth industrial revolution. I cannot talk about all the technologies because we don't have the time, but let's pick a few. The Internet of Things. Now you've heard about the Internet of Things. But it's all about the fact that we can connect almost everything. From the clothes that you are wearing, wearable computing. From the watch, the table, the chair, the lights, everything I can connect to the Internet. I can control it. I can automate it. I can link artificial intelligence to it. I can put sensors in everything so that I know the movement of my students, so that I know exactly who's attended the lecture without taking a roll call ever. I can do many things. Well, sometimes it can be devastating, like the air crash of Ethiopian Airlines because one of the sensors malfunctioned. Well, it's only part of the problem, they say. But it malfunctioned. But with artificial intelligence, it becomes not only a lot of data that I can decide on and that I can use to manage and to do the best things, but it's also an incredible way of making life easier for us. If you go to farming, smart farming, everything is automated by sensors, measuring the moisture of the earth, measuring the growth of a leaf, the quality, the percentage of chlorophyll in a leaf, anything. Okay, of course, if you connect billions of sensors to the internet, what does it do? It generates an immense amount of data. And you've heard people speaking about big data. If we don't start to use big data in our universities, we are lost. You cannot, I would even like to say, if you are the DVC for teaching and learning and research, you need to start looking at big data to manage this university. Big data gives us the trends today, but it's too vast. A researcher cannot handle big data. We use systems. We use things like Hadoop and other things to start analyzing. We use data mining tools. That is how we do it. There are a lot of pictures coming forth because of big data. And all the companies that understand this, they are using it to their profit. Artificial intelligence, another one there on the right. Artificial intelligence is everywhere. You don't realize it. If you use Uber, there's artificial intelligence. The route suggestions, the optimization of time, artificial intelligence. If you apply the brake pedal in your car, artificial intelligence. Except my old Isuzu Bakkie, there's no artificial intelligence. It is so easy to repair. ABS braking, what does it do? It makes decisions, do you know that? It uses neural networks. It decides that this stupid driver doesn't know how to apply the brake. So instead of applying it hard when there's a car in front of you or a coming accident, it presses it, leaves it, presses it, leaves it. You all know it. It's a strange feeling if you apply artificial intelligence. You didn't know it. If you use Facebook, artificial intelligence. Whatever we touch today, there's artificial intelligence. But the thing is, over the years, I'm giving you the simple examples. Artificial intelligence became so intelligent. Well, we're on the road to what they call singularity. Now, I don't know if you've heard about singularity, but we are not far from where computer intelligence will overtake human intelligence. Where we believe that computers, and you can read the work, he's working for one of the greatest inventors, Ray Kurzweil, he's working for Google. Look at what he's saying about it. Where we will solve the problems of the world, where computers will start manufacturing themselves and improving themselves that we can't do. It's not that far off. A few decades away. But it's everywhere. It's in smart cities. We talk about smart cars. My goodness, they didn't have the small car that was rented for me, kindly. So they gave me a huge Toyota car. And the first thing I couldn't find, it doesn't have a keyhole anymore. You see, I drive an old Isuzu, very old car. I still have a key. This one, you press a button. I wonder what you do with the key, but in any case. But it's changed. We can do such a lot with artificial intelligence everywhere. Okay, robotics, closely linked to artificial intelligence because robots are getting so intelligent. If you look there, do you know this lady on the left? Yes. Sophia. Her name is Sophia. You're in computer science. Sophia was in Africa last week. No, week before. Or last week. In Rwanda, where she addressed the conference on artificial intelligence and the future of fourth industrial revolution, also in Rwanda. She's addressed the United Nations. She's a citizen of Saudi Arabia. She's got certain human rights. Incredible already with regard to intelligence. Please watch a video. If she speaks, you can see the emotions. She understands. She can follow. She can sympathize with you. Okay, she's still very, if you ask a very highly technical questions from your field of research, she can't do it. It's increasing. It's getting incredibly clever. We are not at what we called general intelligence yet, that is a robot can talk about everything that a human can. But we also have our limitations. Ask me a few things about certain fields and I can't answer it. I will try to bluff, but not successful. Self-driving cars. I don't know if you know about it. Uber is experimenting with, because they had recently a lot of problems, especially in certain countries, mostly Africa, with Uber drivers, with strikes and demanding more, higher salaries. So what is Uber doing? They invested millions of dollars into driverless cars, and they are successfully using driverless cars already. Trucks are already not in the cities. It's not good in the city. because trucks are driving between certain logistics centers and on the main road, and then drivers will take over. But they take the disposition already in the United States without a driver. Driverless cars. Intelligence. The only thing that is holding us back in the cities is the fifth generation 5G technology. South Africa, we only now published a tender for 4G. The world is going to 5G. We are still on 3G mostly. And a little bit of LTE, which is not 4G, is in between. We are so behind because we haven't freed the frequencies, which was supposed to be done 3-4 years ago, but we haven't freed it. We are still broadcasting analog TV. Okay, let me not get to that. I become political and then. But so many things happening. 3D printers. They printed in April this year, they printed a human heart for the first time. They printed before for medical students to work on. They printed from biomaterial from the patient. But they printed it very small. It's for a rabbit mostly now. But it's all the veins, all the chambers, the atriums, the ventricles, all of it, perfectly. It can work. Even the neurological part of it is there. They printed it. We can print food. I don't know if you know it. You can buy yourself. It won't cost you that expensive. If you buy it for, you can print a pizza. You will still need to heat it. They're working on the laser, infrared and laser technology so that it's cooking it at the same time. But there's many things that you can. If your children don't like their cabbage, you print a dinosaur for them and they eat it. It's as easy as that. There's wonderful things that you can do. So, but we also, what is the thing about 3D printing? It's changing the world of manufacturing. Look at those big HP. Hey, HP is still in printing, eh? Now it's 3D printing. It's so big. You print cars. You print small things, like the professor from Wits that printed the bones in the person that had an accident. You could for the first time hear. He printed the ossicles in the ear. Very small bones, very particular. You scan the other ear, then you make it. When you now go for a knee replacement, don't go for one of those general stuff. Go for a doctor that uses the newest technology, that scans your current one and print exactly the same one. Not the standard fit-it-all one. Eh? You know a dress doesn't fit. Normal clothes doesn't fit me. Unfortunately, life was too good. So, don't. Get your doctor right. But 3D printers, so many things we can do. Changing manufacturing. Okay, enough. Broadband, yes, we cannot. 5G is so important for cars to communicate with other cars at a very high speed. Now, 5G, the frequencies are so high that, of course, we need almost at every few lampposts, we need a repeater, at least for that, but okay. Nanotechnology. What a wonderful thing. Suddenly we discovered that on a subatomic level, if we start to manipulate, everything changes. Gold lost all its wonderful characteristics. Copper becomes, what is the word now? Translucent. Carbon that is brittle becomes so strong that they are considering building, NASA's experimenting with carbon fibers to build a skylift to the station, what is it called, the space station. NASA's considering. It is so strong, it's stronger than steel. Major revolutions in nanotechnology. And let's not talk about nanobots. Have you heard about nanobots? Small nano robots. Now, nano, remember, it's a billionth of a millimeter. And the nanobots is injected into your body, and it's got a certain type of medicine then that it injects into a cancer cell, and it kills the cancer cell. And then it's got a little compartment where it absorbs the cancer cell. And when you go to the toilet, you get rid of it. Hopefully. So, wonderful things. And then quantum computing is now, for the first time, there was one company in Canada, and now they are springing up. Now, quantum computing is very different. Those of you educated in quantum physics will understand it. But the old computer was very stupid. The computers that we have, I have. It can only count to 1. It's only 0 or 1. It's only yes or no. That's all. It's binary. But a qubit, which is the new unit, it's all about the spin of the electron that they use to store data. It's a total new world in data storage. It's a total new world in processing. It's a total new way of programming. But we are having huge success. All the big companies, the car manufacturers are using it to look at optimization. All the Boeing, Airbus, all of them are using quantum computers. They can afford it because it's still expensive. But it will come to us all. Same way that we had mainframe computers first. I see some of you still have mainframe computers, these big ones that you call laptops. Virtual reality, wonderful stuff that we can use in education as well. Virtual reality, of course, Oculus, maybe you saw as last week announced the new Oculus Rift, which is so impressive that it's aware, it's context aware, and so, but let me not advertise them, but it will put you back about 6,000 Rand. It's a bit expensive for your child, except if you're a professor at Northwest. Augmented reality is where the virtual and those things meet. I will touch on it later, I can just skip it then, but where I had the virtual layer over the real thing, and if I look at a car, it will tell me what parts and what do I have to move first. When you look at a computer board, it will explain to you, and it will help you with learning how to do it and servicing. And then bioengineering, of course, extremely powerful, because this is the people that had to, when the heart is 3D printed, the bioengineers are the people that put it together, get the biomaterial, and so they are the people that will help you print your steak in a few years' time. And it will taste. There is an Italian guy working on printing of steaks, but it's vegan steaks. It's made out of various type of materials, biomaterials, but it tastes more like mushrooms. So, okay, so what can I say? We're on the edge of a technological revolution, and I believe it's going to be exciting, but it's different than anything else. I really think there are so many technologies suddenly reaching maturity that is going to touch us in every aspect, and also education. It's unprecedented. And let me tell you the results of this all. We call it, you've all heard it about digital interruption or inflection points or whatever the language. But let me talk about 2 companies that went bankrupt. We all loved Kodak. Can you remember taking, no, it's only those of you that are older. Taking your photos, and it had to be printed by Kodak. They didn't see it coming that we are going to switch to digital. And they closed down. Many video shops, chains, closed down. Polaroid, there's now some versions back, but it's not Polaroid. That instant photos that you could take and then you print. They went bankrupt. They didn't see it coming. And if you look at this from the CEO of Accenture, one of the major consulting companies, they said, the digital disruption is the reason why more than half of the Fortune 500, the top 500 companies in America, why they disappeared. We can talk a lot about digital Darwinism, that's what I call it. They couldn't. If you are not able to adapt, if we as universities are not able to adapt, we will not make it. We will cease to exist. Somebody referred this morning to dinosaurs. Yes. It's only just begun, the digital disruption. And you know what is, I'm coming closer to higher education now. What's the effect? On jobs. It's immense effect on jobs. 47% of today's jobs could be automated in the next 20 years. Do you know how many million truck drivers there are in the United States? Do you know how many there are in South Africa? Truck drivers, taxi drivers, many of these jobs. But it's not only limited to that. It's also the higher skills. Anything or anybody who's a knowledge worker can be replaced by a computer, can do it better. That means doctors, lawyers. Let me take a lawyer for example. If I need to go quickly, I say to you, I have a problem. I consult a lawyer. What does he tell me? No, let me first have a look at the case law. It takes quite a few weeks. Okay, the process in South Africa is slow. You have to wait 2 years for a court case, in any case. But, so what do I do? For the court case, a computer goes through it in a few minutes, and he scans all the court cases. He can even have a look at American case law, if you want to. They already use it in America. The lawyers have now another role to go to court and all of those things. But those things that you used to do is not necessary anymore. A doctor. Your doctor is diagnosing you. But he's only attending a few conferences for CPD points and those things. But Dr. Watson, that they use IBM, Dr. Watson, what does he do? He scans millions of medical articles. And he accurately diagnoses you. They found that it is about 15% more accurate than a human doctor. The world is changing. All of us, our jobs, are in danger, except if we can change. Except. So, the problem is, of course, that I said, is artificial intelligence, because that is the real thing that touches the higher skilled jobs. We think it's only the lower skilled ones. It's only the lorry drivers, truck drivers. No, it's you and me. Also in danger. But I don't want to scare you. I will get to it. They say, just to give you some of the best minds in the world at the moment, the experts, they did a survey that said it's 44 years where a high-level machine intelligence will be developed. You know that we can already you have Google Translate and many other translation programs. I've used it, if I travel and I ask a question in Chinese, it translates it and we can communicate. But in 2024, they say it will outperform any language translator. So if I write a book in English and I want to translate it into certain languages to publish my book elsewhere, or my article, scientific article, the translator will do it. I don't have to pay for it anymore. Or perhaps I will pay for the software, but yes. Drive a truck. I mean, now freely in the cities. Maybe you're aware of Mercedes. I must tell this. Mercedes-Benz brought their driverless car to South Africa. Are you aware of that? And they drove from Johannesburg to Cape Town. Now, Cape Town traffic is even worse than Johannesburg. The only thing is that it could drive perfectly, but not in the cities. Because remember, a computer follows rules. But in South Africa, we don't follow rules. Taxis don't follow rules. That was a problem, a real problem. No, it handed over to the driver every time. It had an incomprehensible situation. In 2031, you will find in retail, it will not be a human being, but a robot serving you. In 2049, can write a best-selling book. There's already, I think he's a professor in Switzerland that wrote about something like 200 books, but he uses artificial intelligence to write it, with quotations and everything. But he still edits it and so on. It will become even better. And 2053, your surgeons will be, computers are so more meticulous and so forth. Okay, I'm not going too deep. I shouldn't. McKinsey said that 50% of work could be automated. It's a more recent forecast. But do you know what? $15 trillion in wages. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of money. If you look at this, South Africa, I tried to make it a different color. What are they saying? This is still McKinsey, and they say that South Africa will lose about 13%. Other countries, more, but South Africa, 13%. In Germany, it's even higher, 23%. 10 minutes, good heavens. Okay, why? It's easy. A human being takes holidays and leave and sick leave, and some of them lie even, but 170 Rand per hour, and then I'm just taking a very average salary, not too high, of course not a professor's salary, and I need to train them and retrain them, and it's difficult to retrain them if technology changes. But robots, 11 Rand per hour, they work 24 by 7, by 52, they don't belong to unions, they don't strike, except if Eskom is not working, they do strike. If you have a generator, it's okay. And they use machine and deep learning. They learn by themselves now. Machine learning, deep learning. Robots, that is how they gain their intelligence, by self-learning. The most wonderful thing. I teach them the first few examples, and from there on they learn. There's a danger because they become biased. Okay, I mustn't digress. There's such a lot of interesting things. So, is this the future? Another type of affirmative action. Humans need not apply. Advertisements. No humans, please. I don't want humans. What happened? What happened in Dedoorns? Can you remember all the protests that we had in Dedoorns? About seasonal workers? The farmers automated. Now everybody lost their work. No humans applied, please. We don't want trouble. Humans are causing trouble. So this is why you are talking about the age of uncertainty. What a strange time to find ourselves in. How difficult. I had my VC at University of Western Cape, Brian O'Connell, he also always talked about sense making. How difficult it is to make sense. And for our graduates, it's also not easy. Have a look. I believe it's not Northwest University. But you know how many graduates are also trying to make sense. We studied for 3 years or 4 years, and we can't find a job. If you look, this is official, Stats South Africa, you can trust them. It's the January, the first quarter this year figures, up to the first quarter. Unemployment, 6.2 million, 27.6%. But if you follow what they say, if you look at the expanded unemployment, it is 38%. That's extremely high. It's amongst the high, almost amongst the top number in the world. Very high unemployment rate. And female is even higher, 41.5. Okay, let me move. If you look at youth, 55.2%. That's unbearable. Our young people, can you understand why some, and I will not mention it, but why some political parties are doing better? Because the youth are saying, you failed us. You failed us, all of you, the previous generations. If you look at this, why? Yes, of course. Look here. I will use this side to my left. Oops, it's not working. Where's that? If you look at this there, you will see the total there, 55.2 is the same. All the young people. Remember, there's a person just with his B degree leaving university. 31%. It's gone up by 11.4%. What does that say? We are not successful. It's increased by 11%. Okay, then even people with, now if you get to that age, it means master degrees, or they've been still studying while working extramurally, then it comes down, but it's also increasing, and they're later older people less so. But here is the big problem. It's growing exponentially. Uncertainty. If you look at this, you will understand why. The first three, physical, manual skills, cognitive skills, basic, and then higher cognitive skills. Look at the first ones. The first ones are declining. 31, forecasted to decline, but it's already been declining. 20 to 18 to 15. Higher cognitive skills, well, it's gone up and now it's constant. But look at this, social emotional skills and technological skills, it's increasing. My question to you is this what is happening at your university? Is this what you are focusing on? Look at this. If you look at this, it's all about the technologies that now company wants to employ, because this is the technology that they are using and adopting, and this is things about big data and analysis. Oh, we need data scientists, yes. And then it's app and web-enabled markets. It's about Internet of Things, it's about machine learning, it's about cloud computing, digital trade, and so augmented reality, and so I can continue. Are these the things that we are focusing on? Because this is what the world is asking for. I'm not saying it's the only things. We also need to study theology and philosophy and all of those things. But I'm asking about people getting a job. You see, the problem is not unemployment. The bigger problem, if we participate, and I've heard this morning that you are more successful because your people are very employable. But the future is coming. Unemployability is a big problem. At my university, it is a very big problem. You see, I know about the time. Yes, I will go for it. A university is not necessarily educating, as we believe. Because if you look at our students, they can read, but they cannot read meaningfully. And they cannot share their critical thinking and express it properly in their language. And they're not entrepreneurial. They all want to work for government. I still don't get it. What do we need? Empowered graduates. They can communicate in diverse languages. They are creative, resilient, problem-solving, critical thinkers. They have a plan. They're not a victim of their situation or poverty, of culture, or they were born in a certain house. No. Collaboration. And they must understand technology. It's the language of tomorrow. Okay, move on. This is a great book to read, The Innovator's Dilemma by Christensen. He said that if you want to survive this disruption, time of disruption and uncertainty, it's really the people that can understand and harness the principles of technological change. If you can understand it and you can harness it, that is what's important. So we are talking, what we need is certain skills for this new age, the fourth industrial revolution. It's multifaceted. And what I want to say is, countries do not have a shortage of degrees. We've got, what is it now in South Africa, 1.4 million students studying at a university. It's quite high, extremely high percentage. But we have skills shortages. That is what matters. And automation eliminates jobs. That's the mistake that people made. It said, it will eliminate jobs. But it creates more than it eliminates. You see, it doesn't eliminate work. It's a different kind of work. You have the skills for it. And the skills here I've listed, I cannot go into it. Innovation, let me pick the red ones. Innovation, creativity, data mining, data analytics, business and entrepreneurial literacy, technical know-how, computational thinking. We need to think about computational things. How are we going to use computers, robots, and all of those things? Okay, and then the other ones I believe you all know. I don't have to go into that. And this is just a little bit more. Look at the high percentages. It's a survey that they've done all over the world. What are the skills gap? Non-technical, decision analysis. Remember that artificial intelligence is changing. It's now not only doing things or analyzing things, but it's taking decisions by itself. It took over the decision-making role. If a drone flies for America in Iran or Iraq or wherever, and it sees a person, it decides to kill that person based on the profile that it recognizes. That is a difference. That's a danger. Okay. Process improvement, strategic thinking, and if you look at it, the technical ones, data trends, operational analysis, if you're in manufacturing, data mining, technological acumen, statistical modeling, that's what the industries tell us they need. So there are 3 literacies: human, data, and technology. Those are the 3. And how will we respond? We have to look at our curricula. We need to look at the design. And I said yesterday, I think we need people with curriculum design and instructional design more than ever in our life. New curricula offer technology and vocation skills. We must make sure of that. And we must integrate technology in our teaching and learning. So, very brief. I've just more questions to ask you. So technology keeps, of course, on changing. Artificial intelligence will make it necessary for us to change in higher education. So let me say something about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can replace tutors totally, already. You don't have to wait for tomorrow. It can be wonderful, intelligent, sensitive, sympathetic support. It can automatically analyze your students. If you have a class of 600 or 800, it analyzes them, it puts them in the correct groups according to their progress. It keeps on changing the groups if you want to, and it will track and it will assist. It's much more patient than we are. Expert facilitation. Let me give you an example. Have you heard of Jill Watson? They use the Dr. Watson from IBM as a platform. It's this lecturer, instructor, Ashok Goya. There's the name. He's computer science, and he used it. Jill Watson and Stacy Sisko and Liz Duncan. It was excellent. The students' performance improved, quite a few percentages. And do you know what? None of them realized it was a chatbot. None. All of them thought it was a human being. And they rated them higher than any of the other tutors that they didn't have. So I said yesterday already when I was just a listener, there's no excuse that we can say we don't have tutors anymore. Big classes. We should take it online. I said my solution was 1 day a week, face-to-face, and the rest online with tutors, artificial intelligence tutors. Okay. So you will also see this is a VC from Buckingham. I think he was very optimistic already in 2017. He says eventually lecturers will become more overseers, but robots will do the teaching. There's intelligent textbooks. I don't want to talk about the detail, but there's one little thing that I do want to show. Artificial intelligence makes it possible that this intelligent textbook tracks the student and then pops up questions so that the students go deeper and deeper into the material. Very clever. I'm watching you, and just at the right moment I ask a question. Keep you interested. Okay, not more, I can say. Then there's an article that I will show later. Artificial intelligence-based open learner model in assessment. It measures the capability and skills and not the number of credit hours that we've done. It's a different approach. It tracks the student and everything that she does or he does, and it looks at the capability and the mastery of certain skills. It can make your life much easier. It's hugely successful. Can you put that, watch a little bit slower, man? Okay, augmented reality, I talked about. Virtual reality, I've talked about, you know it, we can use it. extensively. Many disruptions in higher education. You will have it. What we do with it is important. So, I've got some questions. The first one is, how should we, human teachers, human lecturers, focus our effort if artificial intelligence are used to its full potential in our experience? What do we do with that artificial intelligence? It's time. Somebody yesterday, this morning, it was Robert Balfour that talked about, Professor Balfour that talked about personalized learning environment. I've taken two areas, adaptive and personalized, and I've put it together in personalized adaptive learning. Is that the way forward? Is that what we should do? This is what we considered many, many years ago, 200 years ago, as personalized learning. It's, I think, Iowa State University or Illinois State University long ago. This is current personalized learning, is it correct? This is what we do. Big lecture halls. What can we do with the first years otherwise? It's only in the third year that many enough failed so that we can have smaller classes. But this is personalized learning. We must make provision for those that are different. Many, many ways to do that. I was that one donkey. Do you know what? I was always in trouble because I tried shorter methods for mathematics and then I got in trouble because I didn't follow the right path. Okay. I would have liked a personalized environment. Then, assessment. I told you there's the article towards artificial intelligence-based assessment systems. It's worthwhile reading it. The slides are available. You can copy it freely. You can use it. I don't mind. It's collective intelligence. Okay. And learning analytics. The first person that preached to me about learning analytics was Rassi. Always. That is his pet topic. And but of course, it's important to help me get a holistic view of the learners and their progress. And then there are many more questions. I wish I had time. But your curriculum, does it prepare students for employment in the fourth industrial revolution or era? Does it cover essential technological skills? Is there interpersonal communication skills in your curriculum? To what extent does it, my curriculum and your instructional methodologies, and even your pedagogy, foster the development of higher order learning skills? And, of course, does the university's course offerings, is that relevant to the new era? Do you know what's my biggest problem? It takes 2 years, to change a course with government. And if you're in my field like IT, then it's outdated. In philosophy, it stays the same, because we still do Socrates, Aristotle, but not in technology. It's difficult. So, conclusions. Sorry for the 1 minute I'm going to steal. Is it 5 over? Oh, goodness gracious. I warned you. You're giving me 30 minutes is too many. Okay. The fourth industrial revolution will keep on disrupting us in higher education. It's the nature of this beast. It will. And students don't have a problem. Look at that student. They've adapted to new technology. It's quite easy if you look at the photo. The problem is, can we adapt? And I know because at one stage I've had to work with the more senior professors and I was younger and it was difficult. They didn't want to change. At one stage, out of desperation, I trained the secretaries to help them. It's the only way. Okay, so the one thing that I can tell you today is that our universities, whether we are more mature or less mature, we will have to adapt or die. I'm not saying the universities will disappear. They will not. But we will have to change. We will have to look at what is currently the reality in which we exist. But there's one problem. Changing a university is like moving a graveyard. There's no help from inside. Nothing. It's not going to be easy. Yes, you have CTL and all these support, but management can be difficult sometimes. So it's not that easy. If you say, no, no more assessments, artificial intelligence is going to do the assessments, they will say, what? I pay you. I pay you. Okay. So, Alvin Toffler, it's my last slide. Alvin Toffler said, do you know what? Stop talking about reform and transformation. It's time to replace the system. That's what we need. And with that, I say, thank you very much. It's almost lunch.
Prof. Louis, I want to thank you on behalf of the group, and I'm just thankful that you are not a robot addressing us this morning, because I still like the human interaction.
I would like to welcome you back to the panel. And before I'm going to introduce the panel, or rather ask them to introduce themselves, I would just like to say there's one person that cannot be with us, and this is Dr. Piet Croucamp. Unfortunately, he's in the hospital, but I believe he still has got his doek on his kop, so on his head. But he's unfortunately not well, had an operation and so on. Okay, so we wish him all the best and that he will have a speedy recovery. And we are sorry that he's not here. But we have some excellent other members of the panel. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to start with, on my left-hand side, with Andre Goodrich and ask him to introduce himself. And what I said is, please tell them who you are and then one interesting thing about yourself or about themselves. So let us start with you, and then each of you can just briefly introduce yourself if they do not know you.
I'm Andre Goodrich. I'm a social anthropologist. I'm currently the school director for the School of Social Sciences in the Humanities faculty. And after watching the presentation about robots and nanotechnology, I feel a bit out of place as a humanities scholar up here. And I'm quite suspicious that's because you think we have a lot of artificial intelligence.
Okay, thank you very much. Please.
Naomi du Plessis, School of Communication, Vaal Campus. My interesting fact, I am not a robot.
You sure about that?
Please.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Mokgadi Molope. I teach development studies in the School of Social Science at the Mafikeng campus, and I'm also the deputy director in the same school. Being somebody who has been teaching development studies for quite a number of years, I'm asking myself if indeed robots would be able to assist us to facilitate community development, because in that field you really need to deal with a real living person. So I'm also wondering if robots could be able to relate with our socio-cultural context.
Yeah, you shouldn't ask me because the panel will answer those questions. Please.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Sorry, my name is Yolande Heymans. I'm with the Center for Health Professions Education in the Faculty of Health Sciences. Something interesting about me is I'm so glad that there's artificial intelligence, because I'm wondering sometimes about my own intelligence when it comes to technology as a lecturer.
Okay. Please, Ofentse.
Good afternoon. I hope it's still afternoon. My name is Ofentse Mokwena. I am a transport economist. I deal with transport economics, regulation, and logistics. And I believe in vision activation and building people and places.
Good. I think you know who the panel is, and what at a later stage we got only one question out of the audience. So I don't know if I made you afraid of anything. It wasn't the intention, but later on I will give some time if there are questions from the floor. But I'm going to kick off, and if I listen to many of the discussions at some of the tables, it made my heart quite warm when I heard that people are talking about we will have to do something, we will have to redesign, we will have to think about different ways of doing things with regard to the future. And therefore, I would like to ask the panel, and I'm not going to refer it to a specific person. If you later want to ask a specific person a question based on what they've said, you're welcome, but mine is in general, so anybody can answer. I would like to know from you, you all have a lot of practical experience, and that's why you are on the panel. How would you go about changing? How would you go about redesigning? What guides your thinking? And then the second one is, if you can do it and will do it, what will you change? What will you innovate? So how would you go about it? And what will you change? The two things. Please, if anybody, any one of you can kick off. Okay? Yolande, please.
Colleagues, I had an interesting reading with regards to which says universities play a pivotal role have a pivotal role to play in the fourth industrial revolution. And it was interesting, the author, Menon, said, she says, how do we reinvent university education to develop creativity, innovation, curiosity, and critical thinking? Why these skills are not new, the application of these in our rapidly changing context are certainly new. So I think that basically we have to rethink what we are doing and how we are doing it. And that means not necessarily, I think that, and then it's my personal opinion, and from the chat also comes through, that we have to rethink the purpose of higher education, as you said, and refer to, and what is the purpose of curriculum? Is theory enough, or do we need to rethink how we apply that theory to develop creativity, problem solving, so students need to be prepared in a different set of skills, but when they apply them, because we are developing or curriculating in a sphere of the unknown and of speculation. So we have to start thinking of using skills for them in order to these jobs that they will do, that they can utilize them. That's how I would go about and really rethink content for that.
Good. Yes, I think the one thing is that what we know is, I think is what you're saying, is that there will be continuous change. And those are part of the skills that we need to equip them with. So anybody else would like to react to that?
I'm willing to sort of make a submission of sort. Genuinely speaking, I think we have to pay a little bit more attention to human technology. So the social fabric, as much as we have big data, do we have big hearts? Do we balance this act between these two tensions? Because on one hand, artificial intelligence and technology itself is really a byproduct of our own inspiration, but we know that dinosaurs did not know that change is constant. We're the ones who know that, right? They were confronted with change, it destroyed their existence, but here we are, we can actually understand, conceptualize, realize that it's a constant, it's been happening over years and years and years. It's not a surprise, so how do we change to this? We definitely put change in as a constant, persistent innovation, turn higher education into a conduit, into a place where you can basically come in every day and paint on a brand new canvas, or you can pick up a sculpture, right? Whether you're running a model or you're building a simulation, whether it's the 3D experience or 4D design, whether it's a new poem, you actually have access to the space, this platform, this narrative. Uber is a platform, apps are platforms. Why higher education isn't, I don't know.
But is it true that we know about the change in South Africa? Do you think we are ready? Are we really ready for the fourth industrial revolution? We do know a little bit about change, but I'm not too sure if we understand the extent of this change.
Well, psychology, human beings are very reluctant to change. We distaste it. In fact, we despise it. It makes us sick. You could vomit from change when you can see it on a roller coaster. You can see it when people go to amusement parks. It disgusts them. It's not intentional.
Yes.
However, it is happening. You're on the machine. You're in the game. You are rolling the ball. So are we ready? That's besides the point. We have to play.
Point. That's the point. We have no choice. Please.
Yeah, I must admit and accept that indeed we have to change and move with the changing time. But before we do that, isn't it important for us to study the real context within which we are operating? I'm saying this because we kind of believe that all the students that we are teaching now are up to date with the basic technologies that are there. Take a simple thing, a smartphone. We assume that every student has access to that. A laptop, every student has access to that. And they can even operate or use it. I doubt if that is the case. That is why I'm saying we need to study the real environment that we are operating in. I'll cite a simple example. In my class, I asked my students that they should go to their communities and observe how community members initiate projects, sustain those, manage, evaluate, and monitor their projects. But then because the students hear us all the time saying to them that you need to use the technologies that are there, they are here to assist you, then my students simply went onto Google, downloaded a project in UK where they have never been, they don't know the context there. So it is important that before we even say to them, use the technology, tell them about the purpose of that technology, why they have to use it, under which circumstances they have to use it, because in some instances they use it in a wrong way. So I think to answer your question, are we ready? I believe we can be ready, but there's still a lot of work that we have to do. For example, we receive students here at the university who may have not used computers in their life before. And then the next question is, do we even have modules that teach them on basic computer skills?
But, Doctor, it's a very interesting one. And it is a very important one because those kids need to be ready. But from your experience and what you are doing, how do you correct it? Or how do you assist them or help them, or what have you done? If you have special projects or something to bring the students up to speed in this regard.
Yeah, fortunately last year, because I was teaching a smaller class of honors students, I booked a computer lab, and then I decided to have extra classes with them, where I can even teach them how to use the ifundi that you are using, how to send messages. And you can imagine honor students, you may assume that they know that they have to log on and then access ifundi, send you messages, communicate with you, etc. But then I've realized that you need to take them by hand and show them that this is the way we have to use it. And we even created groups in our first session so that they can be able to engage one another, even have some discussions outside the classroom setup.
Thank you. Very practical. Anybody else? What will you change? Please, Andre, Dr. Andre.
I'm going to disappoint everyone by not being a cheerleader of the fourth industrial revolution.
You're welcome.
I think if there's a few things that I would change in this moment in higher education. The one is that I would like to think more about how universities can exercise leadership rather than standing on stages wondering how we can follow the latest trends. I think that's an important balance that we need to find and that we've lost somewhere. The other thing is I would like universities to sober up and stop being rather narrow-minded techno-optimists. And there's a great pair of essays that everyone should read, written in the early 20th century. The one is by a guy called Haldane, and the other is by Bertrand Russell. And Haldane was a futurologist, and he wrote this story of the wonderful world of the future where technology would liberate us and science would liberate us to such an extent that everyone would live to 120 years old and do nothing but have sex and write poems. And he predicted some really great things. The first rocket going into space in the 50s, he got a lot right. And Bertrand Russell, being somewhat more sober, responded saying that he would like Haldane to point out to him when ever in the history of the human race have we found technology and science devoted to making people happy. Where has that ever been the case? Where has it ever been the case that it's devoted to making the ordinary people more powerful rather than making the already powerful more powerful? And I think that's an important question for us as a university, where we sit with incredibly diverse and unequal student populations, and we're the cheering squad of techno solutions that cost money, that the rich components of our classrooms can afford and the poor components perhaps can't. And then the third thing is I would like us to slow down and think. It takes time to think, and technology, one of the points you made was technology alters the pace at which we live, but it can't alter the pace at which we think. We think at the same speed, regardless of whether we're thinking with an IBM in front of us or a feather and ink in front of us. We think at the same speed. But we have to think about much more in much less time. And our thinking gets worse. So without being horrible, we end up with metaphors of dinosaurs who died because they didn't know enough about change. They died because an asteroid hit the Earth and burned them all up in a giant ball of fire. And if that happened today, our knowledge of change wouldn't save us either. So I mean, these metaphors are sort of leading us towards, well, let's follow the crowd. This is a trend. Let's follow it. But I think we need to step back and think and add what a university can offer, which is balanced judgments around the decisions that we make.
I just want to ask you, thank you for that perspective. And I think it is important, a perspective. But yes, so there's the ethical side and the moral side and everything that we need to attend to. But what about the fact that even though we may live in a very unequal society, and that technology may make it more unequal, but what practically will we do about it? Because the pace of technology is just continuing. It's bigger forces that we experience. I mean, even if there's a trade war between America and China, then it influences us. So it's fine, but will just focusing on better leadership at the university, will that change it and become socially more aware and think about people and access to technology? How are we going to practically solve? Because those students, yes, they will. We will change all of that, but they will still be unemployed. How are we going to tackle that? That's what is. And I fully agree with your approach about thinking and so, but then the next step.
Yeah, the next step is the challenge, and I think that's why I'm saying we need to slow down and think about it. Chasing sort of straightforward and saying, well, this is where we must all be, ignore some other priorities. I mean, the idea of industrial revolutions, of these epochal changes in the technologies powering social life, is an idea that grows up in the 19th century in Europe with evolutionary anthropology and these sorts of things. But it focuses on one thing, techno-economic change. And then it factors everyone as being somehow on the way to that. And what happens when you do that is that everything that's not at the forefront of the fourth industrial revolution is behind.
It's behind.
And what we need to do is imagine how it's different, how it's otherwise, because maybe being behind is not so bad. Marshall Solins wrote a book called The Original Affluent Society, where he goes to South America and measures the leisure time of populations and compares them to Parisians. So he looks at sort of Carib Indians and says, well, these guys spend on average 1.5 hours working every day. That's how much they work. They've got enough food, and the rest of the time is leisure. The poor French work 40-hour weeks for 60 years of their lives so that they can retire and die within 10 years. Who's doing it right? And I think we've reached the point with the Anthropocene, climate change, global inequality, at crisis levels, that we need to admit spaces to think differently. We need to train students who can take that optimism out into the world. That's a different kind of optimism from the techno-optimism. Saying all of that, we need to have students who can be adaptive, who can use computers, who can compete within the space that's out there. But that's not all we can do. And I think you would agree with that.
Good. I think all of us would like to work less, huh? But thank you. Very good.
May I please add?
Please.
The sorry, this thing keeps troubling me. The VCs from WITS, for example, in UJ and Fort Hare came together with Telkom, and they discussed the whole fourth revolution, industrial revolution, and how universities and the role that they play. What is interesting for me is, for example, Prof. Habib said, we have to train our students for the 21st century. It's like we can't stop the sun from setting. It's coming. All right. So, and then Prof. Marwara said from UJ, say those who master the fourth industrial revolution will survive. And that is basically our university as well. And I think that we have to create disruptive spaces where we actually discuss these things in faculty, in schools, in disciplines. And currently I don't get that. I don't think that we're actually discussing it, like Andre said, and start thinking on what are we doing, how are we going to redesign curriculum in order for us to actually talk about these things, because it's coming, we can't stop it. The change is there. And how are we going to adapt in order for that to happen? For example, I was at IMEC, I think 2 years ago. That's the International Medical Educational Conference. And I attended a pre-workshop, and what was very interesting is it was on virtual reality. and the use of medical technology and virtual realities, and where they asked the students to actually showcase certain of the technologies. And what was interesting for me as a lecturer, experiencing other lecturers, I'm not going to say incompetency, I'm going to say being unsure about exactly how to use this. And again, bringing it back to our context, are we making sufficient funding for these things to develop, and are we thinking about how it's going to influence us, and what do we need to rethink? And that includes, for example, type of support that we get. Hlulani and I had the discussion with what should go into the curriculum, how should we do the carpe diems in order to rethink including this into curriculum planning, or are we just thinking, are we there yet in our thinking, not only in our doing? Because it's definitely, we can't stop it. And we need to train the current generation in order to prepare for the next generation. So I do understand that yes, Andre, we need to stop and think about things, but are we creating spaces where we actually think about these things? And it starts with management all the way through, up until engaging the student voice and say, where are we going with you guys? Please tell us. So I think that's just basically what I want to say.
Great, thank you. I think that's what Andre said, is that he agrees, but we need to discuss wider than just the technology issues.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what he said. And I think if I understood you correct, that is the job of leadership that should guide us in this and take us on this road of starting to discuss it.
Yeah, well, I don't mean leadership in the sense that the leadership of universities.
Oh, you were talking wider.
I mean, intellectualism as a value in society should take some leadership.
Okay.
That it comes to the fore again.
Okay.
I'd like to add a bit here. So when you think about the idea of human technology, it's more about the techniques that you enable students to have in order to engage with individuals, societies, entities, and organizations. And one of the reasons why, for example, in the transportation space, transport projects don't get implemented has to do with the manner in which institutions are designed. Institutional design has a lot to do with individuals, so human beings who occupy these positions. Some are public officials, some are private sector representatives, etc. Students, when they get into the workplace, they join that environment. Students that design entrepreneurial projects or businesses, they join that environment. Now, human technology has a lot to do with the techniques that you use to interface with this environment. And innovation has been so hardware and software oriented that we have not necessarily been having conversations about sort of interactions between person to person and institutional reform. So that's one side. The other side is that this is happening in an environment where change is just a constant variable. It's just constantly there. You know, there's no day that's like the other, whether it's via the climate or whether it is via an individual's moods, right? The fact is, there is this constant narrative that you have to enable students to engage with. So we tried this exercise where we took students to be part of an aviation master plan for our province. We said, look, the province is trying to change its strategic narrative. How can we design case studies from other countries to build a new narrative? And these are second-year students, by the way. So it's a massive challenge for them, right? But they're coming in to this space as if they are just experts as well in that particular curriculum. And it's more about, okay, you might not know everything about this, but do you have the interest? Do you feel inspired to interact with this conversation? No laptops, there's no Google, there's nothing. We are here at a small airport, one of the 152 small airstrips here in our province, visiting it on the ground. You're interacting with the fences, the broken down building, and there's one person who's managing the entire facility. And you have to develop a case study to respond to this. This is a different type of, I don't know what to call it, but I'm just using the word, people technology. And when we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, we still have people who are being given donkey cart, green donkey carts that are branded by our university, but you get to a petrol station and there's nowhere where the donkeys can drink water, right? I mean, you have to really think about this because it's this interface where While change is constant, it's not just, future as in going into the, going ahead. It's also the fact that traditions still exist and it's also evolving. It's also that students are unique and they have individual contexts, and we have to bridge this whole gap. But at the end of the day, we've got one constant variable. It's always there,
Well put, the one with the donkey. The problem is eventually, like you say, that you get around and there's no more water for the donkeys. That's our problem. So, but thank you. Please.
Yeah, I want to add to a question to this conversation. That is there space for indigenous knowledge systems in the fourth industrial revolution? Because I think there's a lot that we can learn from our IKS, which maybe we can even use instead of moving and rushing towards the fourth industrial revolution.
Yes, I'm not going to answer you there, but I just want to say, I think it's a good question you're asking, and we can even ask the audience later. Just remember that if you look even like a science like medicine, there's quite a difference between Eastern and Western medicine and African medicine. So it's a very legitimate question you are asking, and I think when we think technology, we shouldn't only think Western technology. I think, yes, it is dominating at the moment, and it's taking us all, and what I've said earlier today, it's very much about an economic war rather than anything else, where all of us are just pawns. So there's a lot of things to think about this and discuss about this, but very legitimate. What about the indigenous knowledge? And of course, there are not a major move, but there is some of that to recognize it and to start capturing it and managing. But it's not as big a drive as the technology drive, but rightly so. And rightly so, there's more to the world than just work and technology, and so we need to ask about all of those things. There's value in that. That's all I want to answer you on that, but other people may have even better ideas about it. Now, I must give you a chance. You are very silent.
In the communication field, it's very important for us to look at the human side as well, for students to be able to think creatively, to be able to communicate, to collaborate. And those are the things that a computer can't do for us, and a robot. Yes, you were talking about robots that's got emotions and things like that. We were talking during lunchtime. A robot can't give a person a hug when they feel sad.
They can get the hug. Have you never heard about the sex robots in the East? No, they can hug you and do more. Sorry, no.
So in our discipline, at the moment, it's more important for our students, really for instance, creative thinking is one of the huge problems that we have. On our campus, I think we've got the most beautiful of the 3 campuses, and students will spend 10, 15, 20 minutes to get the perfect selfie. And then they think that they are very creative. We were talking about it just now as well. They come to varsity and we call them a tech-savvy generation. But the only things that they can do is Facebook, Instagram, and if you, a little bit of your Twitter, as I call it, and then you ask them to do a simple little table in Excel, and they don't even know that there's software called Excel. Most of our students on our campus, when they get into our first year, when they get into the computer room, it's the first time that they actually spend time in a computer room. And we have to teach them how to switch on computers. So I also feel like Andre in that way, we can all chase towards the fourth industrial revolution, But let's get the basics right first for our students.
I agree with you, but I've got this dilemma, and I really mean it. I fully agree. We need to think, we need to get the basics right. But you know what, we're already behind. Like I said, it's a race, and whether we like it or not, the problem is that South Africa or whatever will be sidelined in the future. If it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But if you look at economically sidelined, I think it can create quite a lot of hardship for our people. That is what is concerning me, and that's why I'm saying, what are we going to do? Is how are we taking part? Because there is no more a South African economy only, it's a global economy. So that's my concern. And I think that's why all the people are saying we need to do something. Not that you are wrong, but it's just a wider perspective. You've got some wisdom. And
yeah, I think you're very optimistic to say that Africa will be sidelined.
no, I'm not saying it will be. I'm saying, say for instance, I said.
No, because I mean, what I'm going to say is that Africa has long been sidelined.
Already.
For 500 years. For 500 years, Africa has been sidelined. And one of the things that I think we need to stop and think about is the degree to which things like the Industrial Revolution, the first one, was built on the back of labor, raw materials extractively removed from Africa. The microprocessor in my iPad and the cell phones and all of the mainframe computers in this room are made with rare earth metals mined by children in the Congo. And so even the fourth industrial revolution needs this underclass of, disposable laborers who are going to be producing the raw materials for these things. And unfortunately, a big part of the solution is training people in politics at universities that they can begin to understand the world as a system and position South Africa better in the global economy. Because at the moment we're positioned as the place where people come to fetch platinum to make cool tech things that they're going to sell back to us. And we can't compete in that space. So there's a step in politics before we even begin talking about technologies. And then the second thing, because I don't want to sound like I'm some kind of a Luddite here, and I just want to, not participate. But I think there's really great opportunities for context-specific or context-sensitive technologies that are really cheap and that do work and that you can use here. So a colleague and I mean, you asked for practical examples, took a Raspberry Pi. I don't know if anyone knows what these things are. They're really fun. Everyone should buy one. They cost about 600 Rand maybe, and they're about as powerful as your desktop computer was 5 years ago. And it can serve its own Wi-Fi area, so we built a library. I mean, it costs like 1,500 Rand. You can put hundreds of thousands of books on it, and you can pop it up in a high school anywhere with a solar panel, and everyone can have access to tons of books.
Very low in power.
Very cheap, it runs off the sun. There's lots of stuff we can do with this fourth industrial revolution. It doesn't have to be nanobots and what.
I like your idea of, I think what is important is this innovation. And I'm, for instance, saying, why buy expensive software if there's a lot of open source software? There's a lot of solutions, like I'm also a Raspberry Pi fan. It drives your TV. You don't need the smart TV and all of those things if you want to. So there are solutions, but we need to be creative and innovative in that. Please.
So I'm thinking right now, so what does the world reward? Really, what do we genuinely reward, And it reminds me of three major concepts or three major themes. The first one is an old concept, gnosis. And, gnosis is basically an idea that it's a type of knowledge that is also actionable, but it also has a history to it. So it's got some heritage, but it's very applied as well in some way. But and it's also subject to your worldview. So it's very, very context specific. Then on the other concept is something a little bit more popular, which is deep work, and it's something I think Newport. So Gnosis is with Mudimbe, and then deep work is with Cal Newport. And the argument with deep work is that the world rewards something rare and valuable, And the question is, if you look at most of the innovations or the activities that are driving the so-called fourth industrial revolution, they're coming from institutions. These are students, PhD candidates, professors, and also private entities that are funding this, this push. And we're all participating in this in some way or another. But the world rewards the extent to which you can focus on a specific problem, approach it in a certain kind of way, and engage with it in a way that attracts, whether it's an entity or funding to you and the way in which you approach that problem. This ranges from indigenous knowledge all the way to micro tech, innovations, right? So it's this intangible spiritual space all the way to this tangible environment. So from a higher education perspective, my question then, especially within the context of this fourth industrial revolution, is what makes higher education higher? And number two, I learn a lot from people that are much older than me or have more experience, but I always suspect that by the time I get to where they are, I'll probably have a lot more to share with the next individual. So if we're looking at the world as from a position where we're relatively coming from a genuinely disadvantaged position, what is it that we can learn through mimicking or creating or approaching issues in a special kind of way, in our own kind of way as well? China did it, India's doing it, and most of these countries responded in the exact same way, basically moving from a logistics environment that's cost push all the way to being pulled by customization. So China is not manufacturing in the same way that it used to. You're looking at India now that's taking over this conversation of hand, manufacturing, up to the point we've got factories that are collapsing. But at the same time, India is moving into this tech space as well, and still retains its heritage, traditions, and practices, and it's dominating its own media environments. But then in our context, we are perpetually in an import kind of state, right? Which is something that Andre's talking about. And my argument is we know that this is the circumstance, and yet we're still preoccupied with funding STEM over STEAM. Add art, add thought, creative design, tangibilities. We've thrown away philosophy from mainstream economics, so students don't know the history of economic thought, so they cannot differentiate between neoliberalism and something else, and they don't understand what the political economic system is actually about. So the incentive at the moment is, let's keep up with the trend. Let's get on Instagram, let's get on Facebook, right? Higher education genuinely is going to be competing with that. My students are attending lectures on YouTube to prepare for examinations, tests, and whatever, right? And we could offer, the same YouTube, presentations, etc. But it still does not give them that tangible, real-life experience, smelling the plant, seeing an individual trying to find work, engaging with a street salesperson, right? Developing new types of industries. We have the smallest informal economy, right? If you look at other countries, there's not that kind of monopoly on retail and products, right? In South Africa, we're dealing with that, where you can be a street retailer but not have as much market access as someone, for instance, in Nigeria, where the economy itself is driven by what we call sort of self-informed, retail and commerce, right? What are we doing? Are we trying to enable students to be employed, be employable, or to be able to participate in a way that they can put food on the plate?
Work for government. We usually encourage them to work for government. Or most of them want to. No, but what I want to say is, I think you have, now I forgot the example. You had a very good example. Anyway, I'll get back to it. Me, please.
I think one of the most important things that I teach my students is you are not at varsity to get a job. You are at varsity to go and help create jobs for those who could not make it to varsity. And if we can get that mindset right, I think we can change. Also the reason why students come to varsity, because I think that in their first year, one of the first things that I ask them is, why are you here? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time from now? And then the one question that I get, the one answer that I always get is I want to be a manager. A manager of what? And I specifically, in a way, force my students to go out during holiday times. If a student who does a 3-year BA degree at a university go and look what's happening in their own areas, like for instance, we also have development communication in our courses. A kid can just go to a radio station, a community radio station, or local newspaper, and if you add up the time that they spend during their holiday times, for 3 years, it makes up for a full year. So if their mindset is right, and they really actively go out to go and do these things, when they leave university, they've got a year's experience. And it's street smart experience, where they actually have to shadow people and go and see what the people in the real world are doing.
I agree with you, Yolande. Before I get to you, we need to change their mindset, because what you said that stimulated me was, I was thinking in the last number of years how much we are importing things. People don't think we can make it anymore. We import our trains. We used to manufacture them ourselves. We import even weapons and everything that we manufactured ourselves at one stage. Electronics that we manufactured at one stage is now imported. So why not? Because what you were saying, I think that is part of the problem. But let me get to you, Yolanda. And then after she's spoken, I will ask the floor. Before we move on, I want to move on after this to skills. What skills are important? What should we focus on, all of us? So if you are ready with a question, I will let you ask them to the panel. But Yolanda, before we ask the audience.
Sorry, Prof. Louis, I just want to know, I might be missing something. If I look at the list that you put up, and you spoke about unemployability, okay, universities can't be business as usual. We can't do what we are doing. We have to start thinking differently about what is in the curriculum and how we teach us or facilitate learning of our students. That's the reality. For example, face recognition, voice recognition is based on European and African and American norms. There's limited face and voice recognition for Africa. Is that not the space that we have to start utilizing to say, we have to do research in this, we have to develop this, because this is something that we will need in Africa. So there's definitely a space for that, but that won't happen if there's not a deliberate choice to start discussing this, to say, how are we going to do this? How are we going to is it not rethink? What was the word that you used? We have to reform, if that's correct. I can't remember exactly the phrase.
It's not only just, we totally need to change it.
Yeah, we need to change. All right. So basically, and that's what I do understand, that we still need to stop and smell the flowers. I do understand that. But the reality is that higher education serves a bigger purpose, and we have to start thinking, what is the purpose of us as lecturers in this environment? And we have to start preparing our students for the world of work, and not on work. It's not a job that you are preparing them for. You are preparing them with a certain specific skill set in order to adapt to this changing environment that they will have to work in. And that is difficult, because we don't know exactly what it is, what we have to start doing.
You are talking my language, but I'm open to everything, but thanks. Now, you've heard it. Different opinions. We need to go slower. We need to change. We need to do something. And there are lots of shortcomings, lots of obstacles. We are a diverse country, diverse students, different economical situations, different access to technologies. How are we going to do it? So, do you have any questions? Please. Is there a mic? Manuela has got a mic there. Sorry, Manuela, you didn't see who it was. Okay, and if you want to put it to a specific person, or you can say, or otherwise the panel can just answer. Whatever you want to do.
It's just a general idea that I want
Just say your name first, that everybody can hear.
My name is Sonja van der Westhuizen. This is just an idea to make sure that our students are prepared for the 21st century. And if money wasn't a problem, if this was the perfect word, would it have worked if our degrees, for instance in Argentina, it takes 6 years? Would it have helped? if we had more time to develop certain skills and send out somebody into the real world with more skills.
Panel, you heard the question. It takes more time. Should it? Is that what we need to do? Yes, please.
Yeah, I strongly believe that at the moment most of our curriculum rather focuses on theory rather than practice. Therefore, and if I may share this with colleagues here, I've read many of the external program evaluations. The concerns that the panels have, there is lack of work integrated learning, lack of service learning. So I think this is an area that we have to venture in when we recurriculate or when we transform our curriculum. This is something that we really need to think about, because we don't want our students to be shocked upon graduation when they finally create employment opportunities, because this is what we are saying they should be able to do. So we should give them that opportunity now. And another way of doing it, if, for example, we do not have opportunities for practicals, because that also needs arrangements. We also need agreements with the people where you are going to place them, companies or places where you want them to have that practical experience. We can also do it in our own classroom. For example, we have a module where we are teaching students about application for funding. So they need to write a proposal, present it before a panel, and then the panel will evaluate them and tell them whether or not they are going to get funding. So in that way, there are a number of skills that the students also learn in that particular process. So, but then if we're saying we're going to increase the number of years, will we really have time for that? Maybe our 3-year degrees.
The cost will be more.
So money is involved there, time is involved, but let us also find innovative ways of doing it. We can also factor in the practical component into our day-to-day activities.
Very interesting. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, I would say we don't need more years, but we need to maybe do better what universities should already be doing quite well, which is teaching people how to learn. So that when you leave, you can learn. You don't have to be taught by someone or look in a textbook or whatever, but you can go and do the research, you can acquire the stuff, and you can do that. And perhaps some of the other modalities available would be able to assist with that short course learning, continuous education, that kind of thing.
But do you agree, I will get to that question, but what you were saying is very much what we are doing at the Universities of Technologies, and we have an office for work integrated learning and coordinators and so, but do you also think that that is what a comprehensive type of university should be doing?
During the recurriculation process, one of the things that hampered us the most in the School of Communication was the fact that we heard the comments, this is not a technicon, this is not a University of Technology. And then when we ask for practical components, the people are really uncomfortable with that. Another thing that I just want to add on the 6-year thing, if you look at the new model that the University of Johannesburg has got, they forged links with one of the biggest online teaching and learning platforms in the world, and they are now focusing on short courses in which people who are out there can rather up their skills than come back for an honors degree or a master's degree. And I think at the moment I've got more than 200 programs. And one of our biggest issues is, like for instance, we want to bring in an honors degree program in social media, the marketing part of it and the management part of it. If we apply this year to start designing the degree, maybe in 3 years' time, if we're lucky, we will be able to then offer the course. Whereas we can just as well, yes, tell students, go to this site, go to that site, and for free in most cases. You can go and get the same knowledge and skills. And I think the process of changing curriculum is important. It just takes too long for us.
It takes very long. I've got something there that I realized quite early on in my career, is that you keep everything as generic as possible, because then you can easily change it. You don't have to go back to the government to change it. So if you're computer science, you don't say we will teach C++. You say we will advanced computer language or whatever you want to say, object-oriented or whatever.
That's what you've also learned from this process.
That's what you must do.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Must
it's
look
too
like
slow.
cotton wool.
It's too slow.
Yeah.
But don't tell your management I said that. Manuela, there's a question.
Hi, everyone.
Accounting.
Yeah.
Your name first.
My name is Ian Short. I'm from the School of Accounting Sciences. I would like to ask a perhaps too practical question, but nonetheless, I would like to hear your comment on that. How difficult will it be, and specifically for our university as a whole, to make the need for a laptop compulsory from the first year? I know that the engineering faculty already has some type of compulsory arrangement, with regard to laptops. And the reason why I'm asking it, and we've been discussing it from an accounting perspective, is that if we have that ability with every student sitting with a laptop, not with an iPad, with a laptop, because that's what he will be working with. The student will be working with once they're working. The type of teaching that we can do will change significantly. Instead of them using calculators, we can use Excel, and everything can flow from there on. Possibly doing the exams on Word and Excel afterwards. The engineering students do that already. It's a general question for whoever want to take it. Thanks.
Laptops. Andre, yes?
Yeah, laptops are a great idea, but this is a good opportunity for me to plug why everyone should do a little bit of anthropology, right? Because everything needs to be understood within its context, right? So if you're imagining that students get into some form of safe transportation, leave the university, go to a home where there is electricity supply, and they can make use of this laptop in a space where they can actually even put it down, that sounds really great. But we have to also balance up some other things. So I've got a student who was an honor student of ours last year, who was robbed on his way home. And the robber followed him into his home and smashed up his door, and some violence ensued. And he had a laptop. And since his experience of that, for the rest of the year, he became a hostage to this laptop. He didn't know what to do with himself. He couldn't leave it at home when he came to campus because he was worried someone would break in, and the slumlord never repaired his door that was kicked in by the person who broke in the first time. And then he would travel to campus, but he had to walk home, so he would, hang around until the early hours of the morning, sun up in computer labs, sleeping around the campus so that he and his friends could walk back in the morning together to be safe and not lose the laptop. So it's really complicated to think about technological solutions in contexts where people have really got majorly basic problems of safety and security. And
If I can make a rebuttal, and I agree with you, we should do it in context. So even if we're accountants, we do have hearts, contrary to the popular belief. But
prove it.
So yeah, yeah, I can't. So whoever wants my blanket because I don't have hearts, can take it. So cold hearts don't need blankets. I mean, you can get, obviously there's solutions for it. If needs be, you can have safety boxes, in every building for it to be locked. So I'm not saying it's a solution to everything, but I mean, I believe if you really want to, you can have a solution for, and you're never going to be excluding all the possibilities what happen. But I also, and it's going to be a hard statement, so please see it in that context. You can't, I mean, if it becomes the exception to the rule that stuff like that happen, and it does, I mean, can we exclude, because we cannot not do it. That's my feeling, on it, is that at some stage you need to start, looking at these solutions, because if we keep on saying but we can't for whatever practical reason.
I'll come back at you with this.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Sorry. So that's just.
So the idea of laptops is nice. I mean, I think it would be great to dish out laptops, and maybe Raspberry Pis instead of laptops. They're much cheaper, and they can do Excel and Word type functioning very effectively. But when I was a student, we read with paper, and we wrote on paper and occasionally on computers, and eventually got there. But what's wrong with paper? Why are we so afraid of it? Why can't we just print paper and give it to students? It's cheaper, it's a renewable resource, it's better for the environment than what the cloud is. It's really like we've got this strange phobia of paper, but it's quite reliable stuff.
But it's not the working environment for the majority of, well, for our students. If they're going to be working in whatever, accounting firm, that's what they're going to be working with.
Computers, they need to.
Their working tool is a laptop. So at the moment, they do learn with paper and they write exams on paper, but tomorrow when they're going in the workplace, they're confronted with this piece of machinery which perhaps what they have had exposure to is our computer labs, which is not exactly the environment which a workplace environment. So I'm not overcritical. I'm just, so I think that's the reason why
Because part of the thing was like Herman van Schalkwyk, when he was doing his tour here, he tried to sort of move over onto the idea of giving everyone an iPad or giving everyone a laptop, and progressively since then we've had this rolling back of the production of study guides. So now we must put all of our study guides online, and the idea is that if we give people a computer, they can more easily access it and this and that. But back in the day, when the student registered, their fees included the cost of that study guide. Now their fees don't include the cost of printing out the stuff off of Ifundi. So there's ways in which this move to technology has produced new patterns of exclusion for poor students. I'm all for the inclusion of laptops, but we have to then figure out how to do it in a context-specific way that doesn't produce new modes of exclusion, but overcomes old modes of exclusion.
Okay, I think, is there anybody else on the panel that wanted to say something? Yes?
I just want to say that we're confronted with a situation where when you look at how products are being developed and how businesses and industries are developing candidates and positions, etc., there's a tension between convenience and experience. So convenience is this immediate return, we're doing this right now. And experience has to do with the rate at which an individual absorbs, captures, and understands information through the interface between the brain and the hand and the write-up, right? But at the same time, we also have this extremely flexible environment where Excel is becoming, well, on one hand, it's extremely interesting as a tool, but as we move forward, you're seeing more companies asking for things like Tableau, more companies asking for things like R, more companies asking for things like coding skills. And these coding skills apply across the programming of medical dolls, the development of virtual reality, collaborative teams, the design of transportation applications that collect data for rural road networks to determine where you should invest a new piece of road. And it goes as far as even in the legal field where you have to transfer ownership. Instead of paying 30,000 Rand, to get a lawyer to do that, you exercise this through a blockchain-based technology platform. And to design that, you need a lawyer on one hand who will develop the arguments, but then you need a coder or somebody who will be able to understand the thresholds. Then you're going to need somebody who has a sensitivity toward fairness, so the ethics of the exchange itself, and account for that on the PC. So all three of these sort of tensions are extremely important. Yes, we do need real competencies on a computing level. Yes, we do need individuals who can interact with the tangible space. And number three, we do need people who are going to work with the more technical side of human ethics and behavior. So they're all complementary, and I think from a Western perspective, the fourth industrial revolution looks like this whole, hypertech. But from my perspective, it is really about localizing, and solving genuine problems. when Andre made the example about the student who got mugged, the first thing that came to my mind was, do we have laptop management systems built into our institution? We don't have that, you know. Do we have bike sharing schemes as part of our institutions? We don't have that. Do we have public transportation integration deals with operators that are enhanced by technology, where we can monitor services, you know, in rotation of our students, you know, wherever they're going, wherever they get dropped off? Are we managing accommodation through technology as well? I mean, basically what I'm trying to say is our institution itself, you know, its administration, management, and techniques for planning and implementation, it remains well behind the narrative, right? But not behind the narrative that's happening in the West, but the genuine local context and the opportunities that we have to use technology to actually help. You know what I mean? That's, yeah.
Well put. We have to keep those balls, the three that you've mentioned, in the air. A last question then from the floor for now. We will get back to you, and then I will move on to skills.
My name is Yolande du Plessis, CTL, and there's nothing funny about me or unique. Just to link onto the last comment and the question that started off this debate, it doesn't help if you issue computers or make it compulsory at first year level right through to the fourth or final year if the university's offering is not compatible for the usage of computing. Offerings are, and I'm not going to use subject names because it might step onto toes, but it might vary between using the LMS as a post office, drop your reading, have it downloaded at the expense of the student, and we transfer the cost to the student, as opposed to your environments that are highly dependent on the use of technology and it's core to learning. Countering that would also link to a comment that was made regarding paper. Students prefer paper and technology for two different sets of reasons. They need both. The one is to engage with, and I would like to see a hands up, a head count of people who study by reading a page from a computer. It's the most expensive solution ever to flip a page on a screen. It's not healthy. It doesn't make sense. You engage with paper, with the text on the paper, with the material associated with that subject. That's where the real engagement takes place. When it comes to the development of a skill, and there I pick up on the example that you use, if you can enhance the calculator through a spreadsheet, fantastic. There are disciplines with skill sets that could be enhanced with immediate integration of technology. But not unless we fold in, phase in, gradually integrate technology in the offering so that students actually make use of it in an appropriate fashion, not to download stuff only. To engage, interact, the interactivity domain, the drilling factor as one example, the problem-solving factor as another. Not unless we design the offerings to make use of software solutions, etc., that would require a computer. It's senseless to say you buy a computer, it's compulsory to enter the university with a computer. The downside of this is obviously the socioeconomic factor that we need to contextualize, and then a student pitches with this computer, and then so what? He has nothing to do with it. Life cycle of a computer, 4 years, so it would make economic sense to integrate it at first year level. But then students are not technically skilled at that stage, and that is another challenge. If you phase it in from a final year, they are more advanced, they can, but then they're stuck with this thing that they have to pay for, and they don't use it at university for its lifetime, so there's no sort of payback type of solution. The university doesn't have a funding system to assist students with the access and of purchasing of these technologies. Neither do they have safety requirements. neither do they have facilities to charge these laptops. 3, 4, 5 hours lifetime average. 1 day's work of a computer, lunchtime it's down. Where do they charge? So it's a complex and a holistic perspective on that. Thank you.
I will ask the panel to react. I just want to say is they do get their cell phones charged to be on Facebook. So there must be a place. But please, anybody to react?
Can I respond? We use technology in the classroom. So although we use the LMS, for example, and we upload our stuff for the students, and yes, they download it from there. So the students that prefer the electronic copy, which is interesting, we find that a lot of students come to class with a laptop, those that are privileged enough to have one, and they will access the electronic version. The student that wants the hard copy will print it for themselves and bring it. So you have to be realistic. It's a 40-page article, no. It's or a chapter or whatever. So it depends on what it is. What I have experienced in my classroom is that really our students use their mobile phones. So they access it fully from their mobile phones, they access their stuff from Ofentse, their PDF documents, everything. So I think that we have to start shifting also from thinking a PC is an answer or a laptop. I don't think it is anymore. I do believe our students are using their mobile devices to extents that we don't understand. So, and that's why it's interesting. And even there, for example, I experienced, and luckily, thank you again for CTL, in designing the LMS, it looks different when you design it in front of a PC as a lecturer, and the moment that you go online onto the LMS via the phone, it looks different for the students. So there's design options that again, I think that we just need to start thinking differently of what our students actually use. And it was interesting, a poll that I did with my students prior to the semester on what do you use, how often do you use it, which will you use for learning. It was interesting. I don't have the statistics with me. The majority said, I will use my cell phone, my smartphone. Of all my students, and we're talking 1,080 students, 4 did not have a smartphone. And I have evidence of the feedback of them. 4 had a cell phone that could not be linked to the internet. So it's... That was on the Potchefstroom campus. I do have the statistics for the other... No. I do have those statistics for the other campuses as well. And so there is definitely... I don't think that we should make assumptions that our students are not having cell phones and not using smart devices instead of a computer anymore. So it's just my take from my experience, and they do access all their electronic. It's interesting. They will go through their whatever on their little small. I don't know how they read that, but it's as if it's okay with them. It's
yeah.
just.
I want to get just to link onto that. The problem with a cell phone, it's very good for consumption, but it's more difficult to create something. But that is where you can work. Whether you link a keyboard, they do have cell phones in any case. Whether you link a keyboard to a cell phone or to a Raspberry Pi is very much the same thing. So, except that a cell phone is very expensive, but. I mean, there are ways around it. They can do it. Or they can always use one of the labs if they need to create an assignment. So there's sense in what you're saying. Yeah, Andre? First, Andre was first, then I get to you.
I think that there's a branch of scholarship called social technical systems, which considers how and why. I mean, there's historical components to this and social science components, but how and why technologies are taken up in a particular context. So we, for example, take it for granted that the wheel is a great discovery, but in the 12th century, the Arabs decided the wheel was really cuck, and they sort of got rid of it. And so it's not just about whether an individual piece of technology is really good, it's about how it's integrated into the practices of everyday life within a particular kind of society. And I think that's one of the things that we need as social scientists to be teaching our students to do. That's why big companies like Microsoft employ social scientists, because everyone knows how to sell an iPhone to a teenager in America, but they don't know how to sell one in Vietnam so well. So we need to figure out how to make that work there. So there's lots of room for thinking through this, and that's part of what I meant right at the beginning when I said universities need to take leadership and sober up. We can't just look north and say everyone's doing these amazing things. We've got to look in our own backyard and say these are the challenges, these are the problems, these are the available technologies. How can we make it work here? And that's what we should be doing.
The emphasis is on making it work, yeah. Please.
On the Vaal campus in our degree, there are lots of students that do not have smartphones. And there are even students that do not own a phone at all. That's the reality with us. Our students work in second and third year, they work on the Adobe Suite, where they have to use InDesign, Final Cut and things like that, which is very difficult to do on a phone that's got such a cracked screen that I won't be able to read a message on it. My students actively use their cell phones, but I've decided now to put them in learning circles where at least 2 or 3 cell phones in a learning circle. And then when I walk around in the class to go and see what they're busy with, none of them have got covers. I don't know why. So half of the phone is gone, the screen is cracked, but that is their lifeline to university. They read their Fundi on that. They study for the exams. They download illegal books and things on there to help them. They have to watch their YouTube videos because in our case, our laboratory is open from 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Then after that, students don't have access in the specialized software labs. So there are 24-hour labs on campus, but they do not have the software because the Adobe Suite for our one lab is almost 200,000 Rand for the year. So we've only got a limited number of license fees. So it's the reality. I also just, on our campus, like I call it evening class. My class starts at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It finishes at 5:45. Down at the river. Then the students must run up to get to the buses and the taxis. So 6:15, it's dark in winter time. And they say that even if they've got a backpack with them, they become walking targets. I've spoken to my students about this and they said if they can have a tablet that they can hide away somewhere, then it's okay. But I fully agree that so many of our students have been mugged and some of them landed up in hospital because of that.
I think if I can summarize, and then I'm going to move on. Thank you. I think what the panel is saying, if I listen to them, is yes, the world is changing. Yes, we need to change. Yes, we need to look at the technology because this is the environment where people would like to work. They will not only work necessarily in South Africa, they may even work in the neighboring countries or overseas. So they need to be ready. If they're in accounting, they need to know how to use a computer. But we need to overcome quite a lot of obstacles. It's a complex situation, a very unequal situation in South Africa, and we need to tend to that and think to that and take leadership in that. We can't just leave it. We will have to overcome it. And I think that is the message. Have I summarized you sort of correctly? Partly. Okay. You will take it. Okay. Then I would like to move on, and then again I will ask for questions, but I will start now regarding the skills, because it's quite a question, what skills, on what do we have to focus? So there was a question that I received from the floor earlier. How do we determine what type of content, skills, and values is relevant for the 4th Industrial Revolution? What type of skills? So we talk about skills. It's a changing world, and it's looking different. And we are talking about all things like artificial intelligence and nanotechnologies and whatever. What are to you the most critical skills, and how do you apply that? How do you determine what is the content and skills and values? How do you work that into your curriculum? If you can be a little bit practical and help me. I think I need to stand on this side. I'm intimidating.
At the end of last year, I attended EduTech. It's Expo in Johannesburg. And there was a professor from Bloemfontein that I think made up his year's salary by selling this little package, teaching 4-year-old kids to code.
Oh, yes, coding.
And this whole expo for 3 days, it was just coding, 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 STEM, coding, STEM, coding, STEM. And I came to the conclusion, it's a cute little kit that you give the kids. At 4 years old, they can have this little cat on their phones, and then they code the cat to turn left, and they code the cat to turn right, and to go around a corner. But you still need communication for that. You still need creative thinking. Do you really want the cat to only turn left? Why not jump through a hoop? So people tend to forget these things. The fourth industrial revolution, everybody talks about it, but we have to go back to the basics and look at the environment in which we teach. And specifically for us in communication, it's important. People can create a product. Who's going to have the communication abilities and the skills to market and sell that product off to people? And that is still a human being, although there might be robots today.
Naomi, you're saying going back to the basics. What are the basics?
I made a little list. I'm at my tender age still busy with a PhD, and it focuses on the new generation students that we have in the classroom. For us in communication skills, in communication, the BA communication degree, it's communication to be able to collaborate, which kids find difficult. I listened to a presentation this morning about collaboration in the classroom among students. First year students come into the varsity and they hate the fact that they have to work in groups because the secondary schooling system forced them, one bright kid, one semi, one doffy together. And they have to work in this little group. So by the time the kids get to varsity and you say you are going to work in a group, they just refuse to do that. But it's important for them to be able to collaborate. Critical thinking, the kids can't think critically. I've tested it on first, second, and third year level with more advanced critical thinking skills that we test with them. They believe everything is true that you're saying. They don't go and hunt down information. It's more important to spend that time on a cell phone doing social media or on our campus Scheme Psalm. I don't know if there are any Scheme Psalm fans here. Scheme Psalm is, you have to go and watch it. It's this absolutely ridiculous University of Gauteng, yes, where everybody lives happily ever after. There's never talk about studies or exams or anything. And most of the kids, when I speak to them in their first year, they say that they expected that Scheme Psalm and Northwest University is the same thing. So they would rather watch that than, for instance, watch a little TED talk. It's more important. Yeah, and then the students also need to start creating things and creating ideas, which is very important. They have to build character to fit into an ever-changing, challenging business environment. And then I think one of the most important things for us here in South Africa is people tend to judge other cultures, but they're too scared to talk to people of other cultures, to understand why they do things in different ways. We've even started in our school, when we find time to drink tea together, Poppy is our new colleague. She's explaining the whole process of La Bola, to the people in our department. And now they've got a completely different viewpoint on why things are done in a specific way. And some people now also understand the advert on TV about, here's your cattle. Yes, the King Price advert.
Whole bakkie full.
Yes. So I think those are the most important skills for now. And the other C, coding, not now.
Okay, Yolanda, and then Andre also.
I just want to quickly add, I'm questioning two things. I'm questioning to what extent did creativity, you touched on it, innovation, curiosity, critical thinking, how did that change from the first industrial revolution up until now? I think people grappled with the same thing. And for the first time after today, I'm questioning Bloom. I'm serious. I wonder if we have to start at level 1. I think that we have to start thinking at level 5. And, I'm wondering about things because we ask our students to list, identify, those kind of things, describe. Yes, we have to start thinking if this is the way, and it can't be business as normal. As usual, I'm going back to that every time. We have to, and we're the academics, we have to challenge whatever is happening. We have to challenge our own thinking, challenge the current system, challenge the role of university and the role that we play. So I do believe that we have to start, maybe the skill set is nothing new. How they apply that within the different disciplines, that's new.
She's saying that the skill set is not new, but how we apply it. And it's true. We've been saying for quite a few years, problem solving, critical thinking. But you know what? I've looked at so many exam papers and I've never seen it being tested. We only test memory many times. Sorry, I'm generalizing. It's illegal. It's not true. Andre, let me not steal your time.
Yeah, I mean, content, skills, and values, that was the question, and what should they be? I think there's some maybe controversial and some not controversial stuff. I think in terms of content, we should really think about getting rid of textbooks altogether, because they give people the impression of having all the information they need handed to them in one neat and convenient package, and then if they find themselves without a textbook. So I have students coming to me all the time in high anxiety saying, where's the textbook? Where's the textbook? Where's the textbook? And so then, well, there's a bunch of literature that you can read on the topic and go and read it, but they want a textbook because a textbook not only gives them information, but it tells them how they must reproduce it. It really transforms them into little religious fundamentalists. And then skills. I don't think we need to worry too much about new skills because these are changing all the time. I think if universities focus on the old skills that we did really well, we will still be doing really well, which is reading and doing research. If people leave knowing how to do research well, they can find out anything they need to know. It's a sort of magical key. And values, I would say, obviously the really lame ones like truth. We still need to value that, especially now that it's kind of globally under fire by the orange leader of the world. And then the other one is curiosity. I think we don't do nearly enough to make our students curious. And textbooks, again, are anti-curiosity machines. We give them everything they need to know and say this is the full horizon. And if people are going to go and make a success of themselves in a context where they're not going to be just working the same, pushing a round peg into a round hole job forever, they're going to need to be curious.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mokgadi.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I want to bring the idea of reflection into our discourse here. For me, reflection is very key because it helps one to acquire some of these skills, critical thinking, for example. That is why in my class I have asked my students that they need to develop a portfolio through which they illustrate how they reflect in their own learning, in my teaching method, so that they can also use that to give me feedback. So throughout the semester, after each and every lesson, they need to reflect, ask themselves questions about what we discussed, how we can improve it, what are the gaps that were there, how best can we close those gaps. And even for assessment, they do the same thing, even for the final examination. So even if I'm not going to teach them the second semester, but we still find time to make an appointment to say, let us now go through our portfolio and then share with me your experiences. So because I realized that one way of facilitating learning could be through reflection.
Reflection is very important. You are last.
Oh, thank you for that. I think, I think my thoughts are a bit, let me put it this way. I'm getting the sense that we're confronted with like an old new chapter. I don't know if I can explain this properly, but first of all, students are going to be using a lot more technology. Whether we put it or we don't, like whether it's imposed or it's not. But I'm thinking about the ability to interact with the technology in a way that is ergonomically friendly. So a student walking around with their neck bent for 48 hours per day, and slouching over their laptop or a computer throughout the day for a 4, 5, 6 year period, all the way until they get their PhD, is probably somebody who is going to need a little bit more physical support from a training or exercise perspective, but also complementing that with the kind of activities that require them to actually come out and confront society. So from the transportation and logistics perspective, day one, in the work environment, you're confronted with, operators that might have a panga, which is a giant knife, a panga at the back of a bakkie, drinking, homemade beer or something like that, but homemade spirit. And you could be confronted with that. At the same time, you could be confronted with a taxi driver who dresses formally, speaks English, and shocks you because you didn't expect that. And you still have to interact with that, right? Meanwhile, both of these individuals are participating in the same industry, and they are going to be exposed to new technologies. Whether it's through Toyota's partnership with Uber, or it is through Uber drivers trying to come in with their smaller tuk-tuk vehicles. And here you are as a student, you have to have the techniques, the skill set, the mindset, the eyes, and the hands to come in and engage with this and convert that, real life on the ground information into something that people can interpret and analyze. Do we teach research from first year? Probably not, right? First year students are not preoccupied with collecting data. They're not preoccupied with developing interviews and basically engaging with society. And I think that is an extremely important side of the conversation. As much as being culturally sensitive is important, we have to be genuinely on the ground and operate from an ethic of care, consistently and persistently. I believe in something that, I don't even know if this is a word, but patient research, meaning it's not clinical, but basically research that is all about time. So we do research over time, and we observe things as they change over time, and we collect this data over time, and we engage with these topics and subjects over time, because a tree doesn't grow overnight. Problems don't change out of the blue, unless if an asteroid hits, of course that destroys everything. But what fascinates me is that the skill sets are fundamental, right? It's a seed that you plant. As to how the tree grows, it's really, a question of nurturing, a question of whether the soil is prepared properly or not, and also just general changes in the environment. But my belief is that, number one, the most important skill set for students today who are exposed in a hyper-responsive environment is their ability to manage what we think is anxiety, or these sort of emotional fluctuations that you can sort of see, because many of the students that I've dealt with are confronted with this hyper response. Message comes in, I have to reply, and we see that in the office as well, where people are getting emails and you have to reply today, right now. There's this sense of information is here now, abundant. You constantly have to consume as much as possible, scroll down Twitter, like everything, read every single thing, or just read the headlines and believe that you know. But how do we develop candidates who can basically step back as well and delve into what you're talking about, we need to create an environment in which students can actually reflect not just on the content, not just on the lecture, but also on themselves, their experience, and their narratives. And I think that's where the big questions are going to come from. Like there was a time I took students to the train station. This happened randomly, by the way, and we just decided, we're going to take the students there. Research funds got some buses, only half of the students pitched. 2 buses had to go travel back. But the students that were there, all I said to them was that you're only here to have your vision activated. That's all you're here for. And I believe that as academics, as teachers, as educators, I think that we really have to basically take the existing mindset, even if it's influenced with media, television shows, and whatever, and pick it up and put it somewhere else. It's really a difficult task because if we're teaching, we're pumping up information, but if we're educating, I suspect we're modifying someone's behavior. So we're investing into something that they're going to say thank you 20 years down the line. Say, hey, Prof, thank you so much for that little exercise that we did. And some of you do remember an exercise that you did probably in primary school or high school or university that really got you clicked and plugged into your field, your respective field today. And it's our responsibility to find ways to do that. I don't know how else to explain it. That's the only way to respond to this, revolution.
Just to link on to what you said about anxiety, can you imagine the anxiety that I need to go to work this morning and I need to work with some cobots? It's a different situation, not some colleagues that I can socialize with in the normal way. It's a lot of robots or cobots. Okay, so what you touched on there. I'm now going to open, there's 15 minutes left, so I just would like to open it to the floor about the skills. What skills? They say that many of the skills are traditional skills that we are universities and we've been busy with it. We need to be sensitive. We need to care. What do you say? What else? Or questions that you have? Let us hear from the floor. There are some roaming mics. Yolande, are you leaving? Okay. I just want to thank you then. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Okay, my question is not maybe about the skills, but
Makes me ask myself if indeed there is something that we'll be able to achieve here, because we're talking 4th industrial revolution. At the same time, we are requested to Africanize and decolonize our curriculum. Maybe that is why we're talking of the era of uncertainties. So if we are uncertain, how do we expect our students to be certain of anything?
Good point.
Okay, so I think I have a bit of a contribution here. And first, I just want to get back to us, Naomi, here. My thinking is, yeah, we do have to be sensitive, but it would be interesting to have exams that, yes, we set them collectively, right? But then they vary, across the campuses, But then the challenge then would be like, how do you structure that assessment? So to answer, I think, Esmerie's question, maybe AI and these types of technologies could be used to supplement assessment, but it's two sides. So the one side is that we have to, figure out a way of using it and integrating it, right? But at the same time, CTL has to figure out how to narrate, the quality of this type of assessment, especially via Bloom's taxonomy, or breaking away completely from Bloom's taxonomy as well. But then on the other hand, my thoughts are that if, for example, we've got this device, right? With this device, I can develop an assignment where a student has to record a podcast. I could develop an augmented reality program where a student basically needs to walk around a set of plants and basically identify which plant is fitting with which one, and I created that environment. So you could use it to supplement your assessment, but for us, I think for undergraduates, it might be interesting for introducing the technological competencies. Maybe the master students could then work on, developing the technology and so on, but it should genuinely supplement it. On the other hand, if I want to get into Mokgadi's point, Fourie, when we talk about decolonizing and Africanizing and transformation, all these things are movements, like they're a type of, activity, and they're so abstract. At the same time, we're living in a world where there are immediate confrontation, and like how do we do that from a curriculum design perspective in the context where you have technology and you have humanity, like, the interface.
Thank you. I think thank you for the question. I would like to say I will trust a robot. You know why? Because I can remember when I had to mark almost 400 papers, 388. Eventually I was a robot. I was just doing this. So I didn't know what was in the paragraph, but if I see a paragraph, okay. No, sorry? Okay, Ed, please.
I don't think we're anywhere near a situation where robots can set exam papers. Maybe they can find some patterns in exam papers and that can guide them to some sort of end result. But Marshall McLuhan argued or sort of pointed out to us that technologies are extensions of human beings. Right? So this iPad is an extension of my ability to remember things and to represent myself, and of Apple's ability to sell me stuff. So if a robot starts independently setting exam papers and stuff, then I think we're losing a critical element of the university as well, which is that there are spaces where values are tested and contested. So we don't want a university community where we all agree on exactly the same values all the time. I know we're trying to build a kind of corporate culture now, and that's probably a good thing, but we also want to be able to disagree with each other about the fundamentals that are important. And so any robot that's setting the exam is always going to be the extension and the normalization of somebody's values. It's not going to, so with humans there's a bit of a difference, the ability that I can set my exam in opposition to my colleague to make sure that my students get a perspective that's different than that. But if it's a robot that we all buy from Samsung, then whose values are where and what's happening? And it's problematic on that level, I think.
Okay, there's some debate about now, but I need to finish after this.
One word. That's actually an interesting point, because what information technology has been doing to social networks is creating biases, and you might find that assessments are designed in such a way that they have latent biases that the computer or the algorithm just cannot pick up, so.
Indeed. Yeah, they built, for instance, what you say, that is something that you always need to work with when you work with artificial intelligence. In Russia, there's a very good, excellent program that they used to screen through hundreds of people applying for a job, get it shortlisted, the computer, the artificial intelligence interview them, and then make a recommendation. And then they discovered that because of the way of learning, the learning that it had, eventually it became biased. So it is possible. You can learn the wrong things. Okay, with that, I wanted to ask each of you to say one last sentence, what they can take home, but I think the time has caught up with us. So I just want to say thank you to the panel, to each of you. I think we had an interesting discussion. I think there were quite different viewpoints, which I like. It can allow the people here to make up, they are all from academia, so they can make up their own minds and decide what is the way forward. I think some of you unsettled them a little bit, so they can go and think further, and that's the whole idea. We must engage with this. It's not tomorrow, it is from today, but it's onwards that change will always be with us. So we need to think about it and in a responsible way. So thank you to the audience, the questions and everything. With that, I'll hand over to Jessica. I think you have some announcement.
Thank you, Prof. Louis and the panel. We have reached the last session on the program today, but certainly not the last event of the day. So I'm going